All right. Let's see here. We are back again with more The Little Match Girl. And I'm playing today How the Little Match Girl Got Her Colt Paterson Revolver and Taught a Virtue to a Goblin. Last time we played, we started the Little Match Girl series by Hans Christian Andersen, in which a little girl is forced to sell matches on the streets in the cold of New Year's Eve. And it turned out she was able to travel through time by striking matches. And this was quite the adventure that she had. She came through successfully, survived the ordeals that she encountered, and was adopted by Ebenezer Scrooge, which allowed her to finally come in from the cold. So let's see what happens next. This is not the second game that was made, but it is the second game sequentially on Ryan's website. So in this short little game written for Enigmarch 2023, the little match girl acquires a Colt Paterson revolver and teaches a virtue to a goblin. So let's just go ahead and play that now. Hello, my name is Hans Christian Andersen. Perhaps you are familiar with the Little Match Girl, a character that I made up out of my own head, and with her many adventures. If you aren't familiar, well, here is all you need to know. First of all, she is a very noble person, possessed of rare courage and conviction. Secondly, whenever the little match girl looks at fire, any kind of fire, she is transported to somewhere else in space and time. When she must return from these travels, all she has to do is wake up, and she finds herself back in the here and now, as if it had all been a dream. But do not be mistaken, it is no dream. The last thing you need to know is that after her first adventure, the little match girl was adopted by the famous old philanthropist Ebenezer Scrooge, who gave his new daughter the name Ebenezabeth Scrooge, which is a lovely name to read and just as lovely to say aloud. Ebenezabeth Scrooge, we call out, what will you accomplish on your next adventure? I will tell you. You need only press any key to continue. And so we are back in it. Once again, I am Jace Essen, and I am playing on Tuesday, February the 18th of 2025. And we are using a headset that I have been issued through my work, so the audio quality is still very bad, and I must apologize for that. That was kind of a shocking discovery, just how bad it was when I listened to the playback of my last session, but we're just going to do what we can with what we have. So we'll go ahead and continue with the bad hardware and proceed with this game. So, how the little match girl got her Colt Paterson revolver and taught a virtue to a goblin. Another touching short story written in 3 days for Enigmarch 2023 by Hans Christian Andersen. Release 1, serial number 250101, in Form 7, version 10.1.2, Vorpal version 4.0.1. Study. The little girl and her father had decided that it would be wise for her to practice at her strange ability, though they agreed that it might be dangerous, for she had helped many people already, and if her powers grew, she might help many more. So one night, while it was still very cold in London, Ebenezer Scrooge built a great warm fire in the fireplace in his study. He lit a wax candle, too, and an oil lamp, which he set on his desk. And we can see a street lamp through the window, he pointed out, which makes 4 flames to practice with. Ebenezabeth nodded, and was careful not to look directly at any of them until she was ready. So, here we are again. I suspect there will not be much with about, but thank you for playing this game with its very long title. I wrote it for day 13 of Enigmarch 2023, which is written as a hashtag. But I didn't finish writing it until the 15th. The prompt was match. Learn more about Enigmarch at this web address, and find my other Enigmarch puzzles at this other web address. This game was tested by nobody. I had to make it fast. But then Sarah Wilson found some typos. So let us Begin by examining ourselves, of course. She was a little girl with flaxen hair, only 17 years old, or thereabouts, since her former father had never bothered to tell her her age, or even her birthday. And we are again at the study. The little girl was standing in her father's study. A fire was burning in the fireplace. An oil lamp and a candle sat on the desk, and there was a street lamp visible through the window. Ebenezer Scrooge sat in his tall chair and watched his daughter, hoping she was all right. Let us examine Mr. Scrooge. The old man had told Ebenezabeth all about his life, and how much of it he had wasted, worshipping at the altar of greed. But I have resolved that the money I hoarded will now be used to better my fellow man, he had said, and I hope in my heart that all such evils can be turned to good. Which is a noble ambition. I don't. Scrooge's favorite chair was old and splintered, straight backed and uncomfortable. I wasn't sure if the chair would have much of note, but it's still good to try and examine these things. If we examine the window itself, I don't think that'll take us into the fire. Through the window, Ebenezabeth could see the streets of London, cold and blue in the winter night, and of course she could see the street lamp that her father had told her about. Well, let us proceed by examining the fires in the sequence in which they have been presented to us. And just like in the last game, we will take a short look around the area, and then we will awaken from each of these visions in succession. Although, if we encounter flames within, we can certainly examine those as well. So it might be... We'll see how our explorations take us. So, our very first fire in the study is in the fireplace. The girl looked into the crackling flames, and her eyes began to water, but she went on staring, and then she was in Paterson, New Jersey, at the waterfall. The cataract rushes over the cliffs above you, churning and frothing, and exploding into curtains of mist. The noise is deafening. You are standing way too close to the river's edge. A dirt road leads northeast into the woods. Let us examine the river. You've seen a waterfall before, but it's as if an entire lake is overflowing all at once. This must be the greatest waterfall in the world. And if we now examine, let's listen. No, don't hear anything interesting. Examine ourselves again. Okay, you are a little girl with flaxen hair, only 17 years old, but you are not quite here. You are like a ghost. So we are still insubstantial on these little trips that we are taking. And let us try singing. I walk the maze of moments, but everywhere I turn to begins a new beginning, but never finds a finish. So we are still early in our career here. Let us examine our road. This road hasn't been used much lately. Well, let us follow it into the woods to the northeast. Woods. The road through the trees leads north and southwest. Weeds are growing over ruts in the soil. A heavy coat is slung over a lone fence post, abandoned to the elements. Let's check out that coat. It is a thick leather coat, so capacious that you could easily get lost inside. If we take it, can we wear it? It is so hot and humid out that pulling on this heavy coat would be torture. Okay. Let's examine the fence post. This must have been the border of something at some point. And the trees. A thick forest of pine trees surrounds you on all sides. And then we've got ruts and the weeds growing over them. So yes, that's going to be the same thing for each. The road hasn't been used much lately. So let us continue to the north. Outside the factory is 4 stories of red brick surmounted by a looming bell tower. The disused road runs through the fence and up to the front door. We didn't really check out that coat. We should probably examine it more thoroughly. Let's examine the coat. Okay, yeah, it is a thick leather coat, so capacious you could easily get lost inside. What if we search it? Nothing of interest. Okay, that's fine. Let us examine the factory then. The dark windows line each floor of the building. The place doesn't look very busy. And the bell tower? There's a gun-shaped weather vane on top of the tower. And a fence. There are little guns carved out of wood on each picket of the fence. So, I think it's safe to assume that this is some form of gun factory. Let's examine the door. It's open. Well, let's go in. Inside the factory floor is filled with hideously complicated machines, but the place is quiet. Nobody's working. A gentleman with a mustache is leaning back in his chair, rubbing his forehead with one hand. With the other, he absent-mindedly flicks the chamber of a revolver, open and shut, open and shut. A warm breeze comes from outside. So let us examine our gentleman here. He is a young man, but he seems to be very weary all the same. You recognize the look of someone who's had the same headache for a few days straight. Let's talk to the man. Okay, talking to man. Hello, sir. Are you all right? Hello, little girl. No, I am despondent. What is your name? Ebenezer Scrooge, you say. Oh, that's a charming name. Mine is Samuel Colt. Do you see this gun? You stiffen. Yes? Oh, don't worry. I don't want to hurt anybody, least of all a charming little girl. And it's not loaded anyway. But look at this. He waves you over and points out a fiddly little mechanism. See how the hammer does that? And this is new. You can reload it like this. Oh, it's very clever, you say. My dear Ebenezabeth, it is incredibly clever, but nobody is buying them. I just wish... He pulls desperately at his hair, squeezes his temples. I wish for one of two things. Either for people to finally buy some of my guns, or for people to appreciate how clever I am. Have you eaten recently? You ask. Not exactly, he says. I've been busy and miserable. So it sounds like we might need to either get him some food or some form of appreciation somehow. What else is in the factory? Lots of machines. You couldn't guess what any individual machine does, but you have a good idea of what it all adds up to. And there's the breeze, which we cannot feel or see. Well, we'll have to come back for Mr. Colt later. Let us wake and see what is next on our list of places to explore. Close your eyes. And just like that, she found herself in London, 1846, in the study. Once again, the little girl is standing in her father's study. A fire is burning in the fireplace. An oil lamp and a candle sat on the desk, and there was a street lamp visible through the window. Well, let us talk to Mr. Scrooge, since we have not. Would you mind explaining your ability to me again? Asked Ebenezer, for whom this was all very new. Of course, Papa. It is very simple. When I look at fire, like this candle or that street lamp, I can travel somewhere else. It seems consistent that a given flame will send me to the same place and time whenever I look at it. But beyond that, I cannot seem to predict where or when I will arrive. When I want to come back here, I just wake up. That's all. I see, said Ebenezer Scrooge. So, we have seen the fire in the fireplace leads to New Jersey. Let us examine our oil lamp. Ebenezabeth looked at the tall, steady flame of the oil lamp, and she set her shoulders back and stood up a little straighter herself. But all of a sudden she was in Byblos, Phoenicia. Docks. Salt air fills your lungs, but somehow it doesn't smell like the docks back in Copenhagen at all. Long canoes line the piers, pushing each other out of the way to carry urns and bushels to and from the many-oared boats that stand further from the shore. The docks themselves are crowded with traders and laborers in fine robes and ragged loincloths, all in a hurry to move something or grab something or tell somebody to grab something. Traffic mainly comes and goes along the roads to the north and east. Okay. So, let us examine the canoes. There are so many vessels you can barely see the water. So I suspect the water will not be very visible, but you expect the water to be sapphire clear, but it's actually fairly murky, although not nearly as dirty as the harbor in Copenhagen. Okay. Can we see the urns and bushels? Okay, the urns and bushels are just in the vessels, it sounds like. Let us examine the traders. You are like a pale, flaxen-haired ghost among these Phoenicians, and they seem disinclined to pay attention to ghosts. Okay. Let us proceed then, since they are very busy here, it sounds like. Let's go east first. Market. The stalls are arranged in tidy rows, but there's no semblance of order to the mass of people in between, haggling, accusing, guffawing, cursing, with zero qualms about trampling little girls. Near the edge of the market is a florist's stall that is attracting many customers. Roads lead west and northwest, and you also notice the entrance to a small, dark shop. Okay. We will examine the stalls. Goods and coins are changing hands everywhere at every moment. Each transaction is undoubtedly comprehensible and important to the particular parties involved, but from your perspective, it's just a bunch of noise. Okay. I suspect the people are also, still the same undifferentiated mass. So let us examine the shop. The walls of the shop are painted gray, as if to make it fade out of your vision, but you see it. It's right there. It's open. Let us enter the shop. Shop. The air in here is heavy with a dozen pungent odors. Tall jars crowd the floor, stamped with symbols you can't identify. Hello, little girl. The proprietor is a tall, lithe woman. Her veil covers most of her face, but not her piercing eyes. I'm afraid you've taken a wrong turn. Zedar's is what you might call a high-end establishment. I don't mean to intrude, you say, but you pointedly do not leave. So I presume this is Zadar? Zadar leans over you, trying to stay between you and the merchandise. There's something spider-like about her long limbs, her cold stare. Let's talk to her. Do you have any money? Zadar asks. I'm afraid not, you say. Then why are you here? You shrug. Okay. Let's examine the merchandise she seems eager for us not to perceive. The jars are all sealed, but not well enough to keep their smells in. The stamps don't look like any letters you've seen in Copenhagen or London. Okay. Well, if we get any money, I guess we'll bring it here. Let's go out again. So we are once again at the market. Let us proceed to the northwest. Garden. Flowering trees line the promenade, difficult to see through the crowd. The plaza is built around a stone platform, which passers-by decorously avoid. Roads lead southeast and south. Let's examine this platform. The platform has been raised for the display of a limestone. I've never known how to pronounce this word. Stele? Let's see what Merriam-Webster has to say.
Steel. Steely.
Steel or steely? Interesting. Okay. Okay, the platform has been raised for the display of a limestone stele, itself perhaps as tall as you are. The rock is carved with letters you couldn't read, even if you were close enough to make them out. A local notices you staring. It's the stone of King Azabal, she whispers. Just a list of battles. When you turn to thank her, she's already gone. Okay, so quite the monument. Let's examine these trees. The trees are arranged in neat rows. The whole place would be quite beautiful if it weren't flooded with people. Okay, well, this seems to be everything. If we travel to the south, we once again are at the dock. So, remember, to go back to London, all you have to do is wake up. Let us wake up. You close your eyes, and just like that, she was back in London, 1846. So, we are once more back here. I don't suppose Scrooge will have much to say, but let's go ahead and talk to him again. And we just get the same description of her abilities. So now that we've examined the fire in the fireplace and the oil lamp, let us examine the candle. The flame atop the candle was very small compared to the fire that burned in the hearth, or even compared with the flame of the oil lamp that sat next to it on the desk. But Ebenezabeth knew better than to underestimate small things. The fire seemed to understand this kinship, and it took her to a paper castle. Courtyard. Walls of pale pink paper surround you. Beneath your feet is a sheet of green paper, which represents grass. Lying in the center of the courtyard is a piece of looking glass, which stands for a transparent lake. Little swans made of wax swim across the lake and are reflected in it. One tall doorway, cut out of the paper walls, leads into the great hall of the castle. Another tall doorway leads outside, and an odd gap between the two sheets of paper leads into a shadowy corridor. So this is an intriguing setting here. Let us examine ourselves. Okay, so we ourselves are still the same as always when traveling, but nonetheless we seem to be able to navigate this space. So let us examine the grass. The courtyard grounds are perfectly smooth, as if each individual blade of glass were trimmed to match all its sisters, although of course there are no individual blades of grass, as it is all one sheet of green paper. Let's see the looking glass. As you lean over the lake, you can just barely see your own reflection looking back at you. You are getting to be less like a ghost. This will probably have its advantages and its disadvantages. Interesting, okay. We examine the swans. The wax swans bow politely when they notice you, but then they go back to swimming around the lake. Okay. And the walls. The paper walls are as pale as the palest pink rose and cut with dutiful precision, so that all the angles are perfectly square, or as square as can be expected. Okay, we have a pair of tall doorways into the great hall of the castle, outside, and then our shadowy corridor. Let us enter the corridor first, since that is clearly the most intriguing. If I can spell properly. Dark corridor. This might not be a proper part of the castle at all, but a bit of unplanned extra space between the walls. A snuff box lies on the floor. Let us examine the snuff box. It is a carved wooden snuff box, rather too large to be moved from place to place conveniently. When we open it, you pull at the latch of the snuff box. The lid flies open, and a spring-loaded goblin pops out, shrieking with laughter. I got you good, he wheezes. Oh, you should see the look on your face. You were like... He pulls a very stupid-looking face. You take a deep breath. Okay, so here we have the goblin of the title. This gentleman is a felt goblin, sewn into a spring-loaded snuff box. He won't stop licking his lips, which is an unsavory habit. Let's talk to the goblin. The goblin grins and tries to inch up closer to you. So, what are you doing here, little flesh and blood girl? Just traveling, exploring. Well, would you like to bring home a hilarious trick snuff box to amuse your friends or humiliate your enemies? You smile. I don't think so. Do we have more to say? No, we don't. So, here we have the goblin that we need to teach a virtue to. But I'm not sure that the need to do so has yet presented itself. Let us return to the courtyard. We're already being prompted to wake up, but I think there is more for us to do here. Let us enter Great Hall. Great Hall. The Great Hall of the castle is very tall and airy, a perfect venue for music and dancing. At the moment, there is only one person here besides you, a lovely young dancer cut from the same pink paper as the castle itself. Let's examine this dancer. Winsome features are drawn in pencil on the dancer's face. Her dress is made from clear muslin, and a little blue ribbon over her shoulders serves as a scarf. At the moment she is standing on the toes of one foot, her other foot raised very high in the air. She looks as if she could hold this pose indefinitely. Let's talk to the dancer. The dancer smiles and says hello without breaking her pose. How are you? You ask. Oh, little girl, she says, I am very sad. I am in love with the handsome tin soldier who stands guard outside this castle. But he could never love me in return. Why not? Because I am unsuitable, says the dancer. See, on my foot, the one I keep raised out of sight, there is a smudge. You think you see what she means. I'm sure the soldier would overlook a little smudge like that. Absolutely not! The goblin who lives in this castle told me all about it. A respectable man like that soldier will have nothing to do with a dirty woman like me. I see, you say. So now we have a sense of what is wrong here. If we double check the Great Hall, I don't think there's much here to examine. Yeah, there actually not really any other described scenery. So let's just go out and enter the other tall door, which goes outside. So let's go out. Outside the castle, several other things are on the table besides the paper castle. Here is a pencil and a Bible and a ball of twine. And here is a tin soldier staring through the gateway into the castle. Let's examine our pencil. Well, first let's examine the castle itself out here. Okay, they are the same. Examine the pencil. It's a very cheap pencil, almost broken, with no eraser. Can we take it? The pencil is twice as long as you are tall, so no, we cannot take it. Let's examine the Bible. This Bible is in very good condition and is clearly treated with great respect by its owner. But perhaps it would be better if its corners were a bit more worn, or its pages were a bit more crinkled. Not from neglect, of course, but from frequent perusal. But perhaps we shouldn't judge. Let us examine the ball of twine. It's the biggest ball of twine you've ever seen. Okay. And then last we have our soldier. The tin soldier has only one leg, but he stands quite solidly nonetheless, because his one foot is firmly attached to a broad platform, also made of tin. He carries his rifle on his other side to balance himself. His uniform has been painted on with a delicate hand, and it is only slightly chipped. He is gazing longingly across the castle courtyard into the great hall. You ask the soldier what is the matter. I am in love, he says. I am in love with the dancer who lives in the castle, but I can never be with her. It is out of the question. Why not? It was explained to me by a goblin who also lives in the castle. She is a lady of great status, accustomed to luxury. I am a poor army man with very little status and no money. A woman like her could only love someone who can keep her in expensive clothes and give her expensive presents. The goblin made this all very clear. I see, you say. So here we clearly have the problem. This goblin is ensuring that nobody can get what they want by telling them the various ways in which they are deficient. Pardon me, excuse me. Probably could have muted that. Let's talk to him again. Have you talked to the dancer about your feelings? You ask the soldier. Oh no, I wouldn't dare approach her without a suitable gift. That's how these things work. The goblin told me all about it. You say. Okay. So let's talk to the dancer once more. I really think you don't need to hide that smudge from the soldier, you tell the dancer. Well, you are only a little girl, she says. Grown-ups like me and the goblin understand things that you won't understand until you're older. So, clearly no one is going to cooperate. So let us enter our corridor once more. It seems to me that you've told lies to both the tin soldier and the paper dancer, who would be very happy if they would only talk to each other, you say. Why are you doing this? To protect them from the tortures of love, the goblin wails. I'm looking out for their best interests. I swear I am. You stare up into his eyes, little knots of black thread. All right, you got me, he relents. I'm just lying to screw with them, because I like screwing with people. I think you should tell them the truth, you say. Or else what, he sneers. You gonna lecture me to death? So, this situation is a little more complicated. Let us wake up and come back to London. And we have one more fire to examine, the street lamp. Ebenezabeth looked out the window at the street lamp as its flame danced and flickered in the darkness, and it carried her away, far away, to Tharsis, capital of Mars, spaceport. The air is so ionized it's making your head spin. The rust-colored sky is thick with ships taking off, landing, bumping into each other, blipping their klaxons in retaliation. On the ground, everyone is hurrying, hands in their pockets, eyes on the pavement. At the center of all this is an overworked traffic algorithm, waving and whistling at people and ships, and ignored by everybody. Busy streets lead south and east. So this is pretty clearly a mirror of Byblos, was it? That we were in earlier. The Phoenicia. Instead, Mars is sort of the same deal, a busy place full of people, but let us examine this algorithm. The algorithm is desperately trying to direct traffic both on the street and in the air with its various limbs and monitors. It understands that this is pointless, but it can't give up. Let's look at the ships. These ships are highly maneuverable, able to float around each other almost like a flock of swallows. But rather than flying together in perfect synchrony, they use this ability to swoop into an empty spot, cut each other off, or ram each other from unexpected angles. So, a little chaotic. And let's examine the people. Unfortunately, for reasons beyond our control, you can't use multiple objects with that particular verb. I suppose the algorithm counts as a person, so the interpreter believes we're trying to examine both the crowd and the algorithm. So, okay, yes, we can examine the crowd. The people of Mars are quite human, but many of them look like they don't really want to be here. Well, let us go to the west first. Oh, excuse me, to the east first. Shopping center. Voices are shrieking at you from all angles, hawking skin treatments, hallucinogens, escort services, antiques, homegrown organs, designer handbags, religious experiences, illegal pets. Monitors and loudspeakers are built into the walls, into the ground, into the railings and utility poles. Everyone but you is ignoring all this effortlessly. One shop, way at the edge of the open air mall, seems to be fairly quiet. Streets lead southwest and west. Let's examine this shop. The sign says this shop is called The Hideaway, which sounds very appealing from where you're standing. Let's examine monitors. The monitors are all so bright they make your eyes water. You see something about cat customization before you have to look away. Let's enter the shop. The Hideaway. The shelves are crowded with bizarre and distressing wares. Unrecognizable skulls grin toothily. Books with unseemly titles lean against fanciful works of taxidermy and weapons of otherworldly design. A muscular woman with incredibly thick glasses peers over the counter at you. On the counter, in a small refrigerated display, is a bowl of yogurt. Let's examine the woman. Her glasses make her eyes look tiny, but that doesn't stop her from being extremely intimidating. Talk to woman. Hello, you say. My name is Ebenezabeth. Veeder, says the proprietor. Are you here to buy something? Maybe, you say, and she rolls her eyes. So, yeah, continuing our echo of the other location, that was Zadar, and here we have Hadar or Hadar. So let's examine the shelves. You are trying not to examine any of the merchandise too closely, except perhaps for the yogurt? It is a bowl of cold yogurt, with chunks of various fruits sitting at the bottom, and a little sachet of granola on the side. I think I should probably just keep this open.
Sachet.
Sachet. Okay. Okay, and a little sachet of granola on the side. It is in a refrigerated display that we cannot see. Okay, well, let's go back out and continue to the southwest. The public park. An elaborate system of fountains crosses the park, spitting jets of water at and focusing your attention on a tall statue in the center. The locals pay none of this any mind. They need to get to where they're going. Paths out of the park lead northeast and north. One person does care about the statue. He's trying to wash some bird poop off its shoulder. Let's check out that statue then. The bronze sculpture must stand 10 feet tall. In one hand, the man holds a small globe of Mars, which is a little fountain itself. Water flows over the planet onto the statue's hand and runs down his arm. On his shoulder is a large and unsightly white stain, which the custodian is trying to wipe away, without success. The plaque says this is Mars Emperor Professor Albus Burnside, and points out, perhaps gratuitously, that he is the one who managed to bring so much drinkable water to Mars. Let's check out that stain. Just gives us the description of the statue again. And so let's examine the custodian. The custodian is trying to shimmy up the side of the statue, a large sponge-like object in one hand. He isn't having much luck. Let's talk to the custodian. Can I help you? Can I help? You ask. Why'd they have to bring pigeons to this planet? The custodian grumbles. Thanks for offering, but I don't see how. Unless you've got a cherry picker, or like one of those grabber claws. Then I could grab my eraser in the claw and scrub it from down here. Or a ladder, you offer. Oh, sure, says the custodian, but you don't have any of that stuff, do you? Sorry. It's okay, me neither. Okay. What else did we have in the public park? There are fountains. Water gushes overhead from fountain to fountain. Hardly a drop touches the ground. The design isn't so much lovely to look at as it is a reminder that someone made sure there's plenty of water on Mars. Okay. Well, I think we've seen what we need to see here, because now it takes us back to the spaceport. So let us wake up. And do we have anything on our... Yeah, we have the heavy coat here. Let's show the coat to Scrooge. Scrooge was somewhat surprised at the sight of the heavy coat. "Are you able to bring things back from your travels?" he asked. "It seems so," said the little girl. "It was very difficult to bring back little Puss and Urimedonte's violin, but I think I am getting better at it." Very good," said the old man, and he turned his attention back to the heavy coat. "Such a coat would be just the thing for a London winter like this," said Scrooge, "but surely someone else needs it more than I do." Okay. Let's consider. We have our 4 destinations now. We got this in New Jersey, where it was too hot to be of any use. But we should still show it to Mr. Colt, so let's examine the fireplace. So, let's show coat to Mr. Colt. "I have no need for a coat like that," he says. "It's damned hot in here as it is." That makes sense. We wake up, examine the lamp. Here we are in Biblos again. "Is that supposed to be a coat?" Zadar inspects the stitching. "I've never seen anything like it." "I brought it from far away," you tell her. "Well, that was a waste of time. Nobody around here needs a coat this heavy." Okay. All right. So, in here, we show the coat to the goblin. "Nice coat," says the goblin. "Won't fit me, unfortunately. Look how huge my head is." It is rather huge, you admit. Okay. Let's show it to the soldier. The soldier doesn't want to accept the heavy coat. "I have quite a nice uniform already," he says. Okay. We show the coat to the dancer as well. You have a feeling the dancer would crumple under this coat, so you don't bring it up. Okay. So let us return to Mars. It goes south. So, show the coat to the custodian. I don't see how he bites his lip. "I don't see how a big coat applies to this situation," he says, and you have to admit, you don't either. Okay, so let's take it to the other shop owner. You show her the heavy coat. "I don't buy dirty old coats," she says. Okay. Hmm. So we have the fireplace, the oil lamp, the candle, and the street lamp. Okay, the docks are crowded with traders and laborers in fine robes. Steel is here. It's a rock with a list of battles in honor of King Azibal. Oh, near the edge of the market is a florist stall that isn't attracting many customers. This is something I missed before. The florist is leaning on his little table of flowers, his arm crossed. You introduce yourself to the florist, whose name turns out to be Ishak. The flower business was my dad's, he explains. I guess my heart's not really in it. What would you rather be doing? You ask. He stares at the ground for a while. Some friends of mine are headed up north, he says, where it snows all the time and there are dragons all over the place. I want to go with them, but I don't have the guts. Sometimes you just have to decide to have the guts, you tell him. I've heard that, says Ishak. Well, I think we found the destination of our coat, fortunately. You push the heavy coat onto Ishak's table. What's this? He asks. It's a coat, you explain. I think you should take it to the snowy Northlands with your friends. Try it on. He tries it on. He fills it out perfectly. You've got it in yourself to do it, and you won't be alone. And you'll be warm, warmer than all of your friends, I imagine. Ishak puffs out his chest. All right, I'm not sure how, but you've convinced me. Because I got you to try on the coat, you explain. A clever little salesgirl. Well, here. He picks up an orchid in a little clay jar and presses it into your hands. Not quite a fair trade, but I'd better hurry if I'm going to catch up with them. I'm afraid I probably won't see you again, Ebenezer. You never know, you say, but he's already gone. So, we have an orchid now. A lovely purple orchid in a little clay jar. I wonder if this is going to be of use in... I would expect Mars. So let's take it to all of the other places first. Let's enter the shop and show her the orchid. Pretty, says Zadar of the orchid, but she's clearly not impressed. And we show this to Ebenezer. How charming, said Scrooge of the flower, but I'm afraid it won't last long in this climate. Let's examine the fireplace. And show the orchid. He frowns at the orchid. Quite a fine accessory for a little girl. Not so much for a mustachioed inventor like myself. I don't think this is going to be of much use to the people of the paper castle, but let's examine the candle all the same. Showing the orchid to the goblin. You show the orchid to the goblin. He leans over and breathes in its dark, mysterious aroma. Thanks, he says. What a lovely flower, says the dancer. But why would you give me such a gift? We've only just met. So you don't give it to her. Fair enough. So that actually makes me wonder if maybe the Tin Soldier would use this, and if so, I would rather show it to the people in Mars first. Let's just double check. Okay, yeah, that's correct. So let's wake up. Street lamp. We've got the custodian. Pretty, says the custodian, but he can't pay the orchid much attention. He has a job to do. And Go northeast. You show her the orchid. Oh, that's pretty, she says. She touches its petals gently, but she doesn't seem to want to pursue the subject any further than that. Okay, so it's not valuable in Mars. That's fine. We've already found where it does belong, so we examine the candle and go out, and we show the orchid to the soldier. Would this be an acceptable gift, you ask, presenting the orchid to the soldier. He leaps back in shock. What a delicate flower! You must have cut it out with the tiniest scissors in the world. What do you want for it? I don't need any payment, you try to say, but the soldier is already hopping away. He disappears behind the castle momentarily and returns carrying a long sewing needle. This is my most valuable possession. Hardly a gift for a beautiful dancer, but a very fair trade for your orchid. I should say so, you tell him, and a trade is effected. So, we now have the needle. The needle is a long metal bar about as long as you are tall. One end comes to a very sharp point. In the other is a narrow hole called an eye, which seems like it's going to be of use to our custodian. But let us talk to the soldier now. So, when are you going to talk to the dancer? I'm working up the nerve, the soldier explains. I'm still not sure if such a thing is permitted. Perhaps I should ask the goblin. You roll your eyes. Yeah, okay. So, wake up. So we have the needle. Is it still long? Yes, it is. Is that a javelin? Scrooge asked. But Ebenezer explained that it was a sewing needle and how she came to acquire it. So examine the fireplace. Let's show it to Samuel Colt. He isn't as impressed by the needle as you might have expected. This isn't that kind of factory, he explains. I'm not quite sure what kind of factory that would be. So we wake up, examine the lamp. Here we go. Nope, it's to the east. The force stall is abandoned. We go in. We show the needle. Don't go waving that around in my store, says Zadar, and she almost grabs the needle out of your hands. Okay. So sure enough, we take it to Mars. Examine street lamp. So, Hidar, she scoffs at the giant needle. Cute, she says. Not my kind of thing. Let's see if this is going to work for our custodian. Would this help? Could be, could be, could be. Hand it on over. He impales the eraser sponge on the needle's point and swings it up to the statue's shoulder. The pigeon droppings are wiped away in a matter of moments. Say, this is one handy piece of scrap metal. Mind if I keep it? If I can have the eraser. Deal. He tosses you the sponge and ambles off with the needle under his arm. So, the eraser is made from some soft futuristic material, perfect for cleaning all sorts of things. So this will allow us to finally give the dancer what she needs to clean off her smudge. I think it's northeast from here, and we show the eraser here. What do I need an old eraser for, she asks. To clean stuff up? No thanks. Okay, so we wake up. What on earth is that? Asked Ebenezer Scrooge. Not on Earth, Papa. It's an eraser from the planet Mars, Ebenezer explained, and her papa nodded slowly. So, let's see what Samuel Colt has to say about our eraser. If we show it to him, you show him the eraser, but he only squints at it. I don't make that many mistakes, he says. Okay. And We got it from Mars. We've shown it to Samuel Colt. We're going to be taking it to the candle. Let's examine the lamp. Okay, and we've already gotten rid of the florist, so we just have Veeder to show. Veeder stares at the eraser. What's that, a sponge? More or less, you say. Well, good for you. Biblos has more sponges than we know what to do with. So, we wake up. Okay, and now we examine the candle. To the tin soldier, that looks very useful, says the soldier, but I don't think it would be a good gift for the dancer. Oh, if only he knew. She is really looking for something exactly like that. Did we show the eraser to the goblin? The goblin rolls his eyes at the eraser. Don't try to erase me, he says. My features are sewn on anyway. Okay. Now, we show the eraser to the dancer. Maybe this would help, you say, presenting the eraser. The dancer's eyes light up. She grabs it out of your hands and begins rubbing it against the alleged smudge. Thank you, thank you, thank you, she cries, but I must give you a reward. And she unties the spangle from around her waist and hands it to you. Will you go talk to that soldier now? You ask. I think I will, but perhaps I should ask that goblin first. So we talk to the dancer again. Don't you think it's time that you went out and talked to the tin soldier? The dancer swallows a lump in her throat. I'm not sure. Can such a noble man really love someone like me? Someone who once had a smudge? Yes, you say, but she isn't listening. We talk to the soldier. So, when are you going to talk to the dancer? I'm working up the nerve, the soldier explains. I'm still not sure if such a thing is permitted. Perhaps I should ask the goblin. You roll your eyes. Okay. So, the goblin is really messing with everything. Okay. Let us examine our spangle. We should have shown that off first. The spangle was a thin disc of glittering metal, pierced by a small hole, through which was run a bit of thread, just long enough to be worn around a slender individual's waist. Okay. I'm not sure who's going to most appreciate that. I feel like it's going to be one of the merchants, but I'm not sure which one. Okay, so Veeder wants money, so I'm pretty sure Hadar will be the one to appreciate this most. Let's go ahead and show this to Scrooge. Look at that! Was it very expensive? Asked Ebenezer. I don't think so, said the little girl. So let us show Spangle. That looks very familiar, says the soldier of the Spangle, so you drop the subject. Show the Spangle to the Goblin. The Goblin gawks at the Spangle. Where'd you get that? You smirk. Not telling? What will the dancer say of her Spangle? I won't accept it, says the dancer, waving the spangle away. I appreciate your help too much, and I think I may need this eraser again in the future. Okay. So I don't think Samuel Colt has any interest in this. He frowns at the metal disc. Did you find that around here? No, you say. Oh, good. So we should be okay to examine the lamp, because I don't think this is of interest here. Oh, well, this actually is of most interest to Zadar. So let us wake up and go to Mars first. Okay. Actually, I don't. Is the custodian still here? Yeah, he's not around. He has left. So let us show the spangle to Hadar. You show her the spangle. Is that a big piece of tin? She asks. I think so. What? Did it fall off a truck? Never mind. I don't care. So, okay, yeah, she's unimpressed because obviously they have much better material science in Mars. So let's wake up and bring it back to Byblos. Okay, so we show our spangle. When she sees the twinkling metal, Zedar's eyes go as wide as obols. What's that you've got there? She almost yanks it out of your hands. Just an accessory of sorts, you tell her, pulling it back from her. How much do you want for it? You shrug. She steps back, regains her composure. Here's an idea, she says. I have some dye here from Tyrus. It's worth more than your own little life, but for a one-of-a-kind item like yours, it's a disgustingly fair trade. You pretend to take a while to think about it, then you nod. She hands over the pot of Tyrian dye. You hand over the spangle. So the spangle, it was described as being appropriate attire for someone slender. I should have made the connection that this is uh, alluding to Zadar. So let's examine our new dye. A clay pot containing a quantity of dark purple ooze. The smell isn't very appealing. But that's purple. Oh, that's kind of a big deal. Yeah, she's not kidding around. Zidar's eyes wrinkle, and you deduce that she's sneering at the jar of dye. Afraid not, little girl. All sales final. Okay. Ebenezer Beth told her father about the dye. He was quite impressed. Very valuable stuff, he cried. We must put it to good use. But I trust your judgment, of course. So he's leaving it up to us to decide what to do with it. Let's see. The dye. So we don't need to bring it to the paper castle because we've already resolved both of the issues for the frustrated lovers, and the goblin will probably be the end of our chain of trades because we're going to teach him a lesson. So, I don't think Samuel Colt has any use for the die, so let's go ahead and bring it to him first. Careful with that, he says of the die. It looks like it'd be an awful bother to clean up, which I suspect is true. So let's wake. We got it from Byblos. There's nobody there to show it to, so that we can go ahead and at least show it to the people in the paper castle. So we examine the candle. Is that paint? Asks the soldier. Something close to it, you say. Well, be careful with it. So that makes sense. In corridor. Let's see what the goblin says. To the goblin? Ha! It's just a bunch of gunk. The goblin shakes his head. I don't care. Great. Go into the Great Hall. And the dancer just turns up her nose at the foul-smelling dye. Okay. So we bring this to Mars, which I suppose does have less access to certain elements. Examine the street lamp. Okay, so you show her the jar. What is this? It stinks. It's a sort of dye, Tyrian purple, you say. About 3,000 years old? She stares at you. Then she grabs an odd machine from behind the counter. She points it at the jar, and it starts beeping and clicking. It's your... She coughs. Okay, name your price. The yogurt, you say. You got it. You take the yogurt bowl. I don't remember if we examined the dye. I'm pretty sure we did. It is a bowl of cold yogurt with chunks of various fruits sitting at the bottom and a little sachet of granola on the side. If we talk to Hadar, can I help you find anything? Asks Hadar. It's all very interesting, you say. She drums her fingers on the counter. Let's show her the yogurt again. Considering the risk that she might change her mind, you think it better not to rub the yogurt in her face. She seemed pretty convinced of the superiority of the dye. I think we don't have any real danger there. But let's go ahead and wake up nonetheless. We show it to Ebenezer. The old man smiled politely. I'm not very hungry, he said. Well, we're clearly going to take this to Samuel Colt, so we shall bring this back to the castle first. The tin soldier isn't at all interested in the yogurt. Only military rations for me, he says. Let's show it to the goblin. Not for me, says the goblin. I don't do dairy. And we show it to the dancer. The dancer shakes her head. I never touch the stuff, she says. I don't think Zadar is going to have any use for it. Well, we know she's not going to, but we can go ahead and show it to her because she should still be in her shop. So we examine the lamp. Zadar sniffs the yogurt and waves it away. Disgusting, she mutters. Okay. So let us see if we can revitalize Samuel Colt. You push the yogurt bowl into his lap. Eat this, you say. You need it. He sighs deeply, but relents. Very soon he asks you where you got such a delicious bowl of yogurt, so you tell him the whole story. He's understandably confused by certain details, and you're forced to go back and tell him about your earlier adventure, about the night Ebenezer Scrooge adopted you. Soon Mr. Colt is feeling much better, and he begins working on his revolver. He asks you to keep going, though, so you go into some detail about the calligrapher and the convenience store and Atlantis. And then you get to the part where you are forced to destroy the vampiress Eurymedon with Poseidon's trident. You still feel awful about that. You wish you could have done anything else to stop her. Violence is the redoubt of an imperfect wisdom, says Samuel Colt, staring down at his revolver. Nobler beings than we will make plowshares of all such swords one day. But in this age, a perfect wisdom eludes us. We indulge our barbarism in the name of civilization. We dress cruelty and vengeance in the tattered robes of justice. And we answer violence with violence, as we answer ignorance with ignorance, hatred with hatred. When our better angels would have us wield forgiveness and compassion, we wield this. He places the gun in your hands, and we tell ourselves we are putting the world to right. It's heavier than you expected. You are doomed to face questions without easy answers, he says. Until a perfect wisdom presents itself, I suggest you learn to use this. I engraved it for you, you see? You run your fingers over the steel. Thank you, Mr. Colt. So it was that by means of a heavy coat, an orchid, a needle, an eraser, a spangle, some Tyrian dye, and a yogurt bowl, the little match girl came to possess her famous Colt Paterson revolver. But she still had something left to do. We examine the revolver. An intricate pattern of flames is engraved in the side of your revolver, surrounding the words, "For my friend, Ebenezabeth, Samuel Colt." We show it to him. "Do you like it?" asks Colt. "It is very pretty," you say. Let's talk to him one last time. "Thanks again for the yogurt, Miss Scrooge. I'm feeling much more optimistic, and I think my headache is subsiding." "I'm glad to hear it, Mr. Colt." And so we shall go our separate ways by waking. And at last we are going to show Mr. Scrooge the fruits of our journey. "Goodness," said Ebenezer Scrooge, "where did you get that?" "In New Jersey," explained the girl. This seemed not to sit right with the old man, but all he said was, "Well, please be careful." It didn't occur to me. London is in 1846. New Jersey, we did not get an actual year. I don't remember exact timeline of when Samuel Colt was making his revolvers, but it could have been almost contemporaneous. Let's see. Samuel Colt was born 1814, died 1862. So this actually is during his lifespan when we are in London. So that is travel through space, but not time. Interesting. Well, I mean, approximately. He did seem young, so that was probably earlier. Okay, let us show our revolver to the people of Byblos. We show the revolver. Zadar inspects the gun closely. "And what is this supposed to be?" "A weapon," you tell her. "I don't get it," she says. So let us go now to Mars. You show her the gun. Her jaw drops. "That's gotta be a replica, right?" she asks, almost in a whisper. "No, I got it from Samuel Colt himself." You let her take a closer look. She's drooling, but then she turns it over. "Personalized," she mutters. "That doesn't do a lot for the resale value." And she hands it back to you. So let us go to the castle made of paper, which is the candle. Okay, let's talk once more and show our new possession to our friends. "That's quite a nice revolver," says the soldier. "Your rifle is very nice too," you say. Okay. The dancer shrinks back from the gun, then resumes her balletic pose. "Please put that away," she says. "All right, Goblin." The Goblin smiles down at you, and you smile up at him. "Mr. Goblin," you begin, "what do you think would happen if I went out into the courtyard and screamed at the top of my lungs to the tin soldier and to the paper dancer, telling both of them that each loves the other, and that all the advice you gave them was nothing but a bunch of cruel and pointless lies?" He is no longer smiling. "I don't think you should do that," he says. "I see." Let's talk to him again. Do you mean to say, asked the goblin, that you really do plan to go out into the courtyard and scream at the top of your lungs to the soldier and the dancer and... His voice falters. I think I might, actually. So let's do that. We go out, we shout, you take a deep breath, and you begin explaining the situation as loudly as you can. So the tin soldier came into the courtyard, and the paper dancer came out from her hall, and the two came to understand quite quickly that there were not so many obstacles to their love as they had thought. The goblin tried to run away, but this was difficult, as he was sewn into a snuff-box. He was apprehended without much trouble, and it was decided generally among all the other toys that his deceptions should be punished, so they pushed him off of the table into a drawer, where he was shut up with a lot of boring stationery and bits of string. When she was sure that the goblin had been dealt with justly, but not cruelly, Ebenezer woke up and returned to London, where she told Ebenezer Scrooge about all that had transpired. How she had acquired her new revolver through the use of a heavy coat, an orchid, a needle, an eraser, a spangle, some Tyrian dye, and a yogurt bowl. And she explained how Mr. Colt's speech had inspired her to deal with the goblin without violence, or the threat of violence, but by teaching him a virtue. Oh, right. This was kind of a situation where I should have tried to present the gun and gotten a bad ending and learned the lesson, and I completely forgot that that's. I was trying to exhaust all possibilities, so I talked to him first and got what looks to be the good ending that's playing out now. At this point, I suppose I should make sure the story has had the correct effect on its patient reader. Would you mind telling me, if you can, what the virtue was that the little match girl taught to the goblin? Oh no, there's a question that I have to answer, and I can't remember what the answer is. What was the virtue that the little match girl taught to the goblin? It was not being, not screwing with people. What is that virtue? It is reticence. It's pacifism. Oh dear. Let's see. What was the virtue that? Well, let's see what the actual virtues. The list of virtues. Authenticity, gratitude, patience, courage, kindness, compassion, honesty, hope, humility, wisdom, creativity, enthusiasm, loyalty, forgiveness, justice. The 7 virtues are temperance, charity, patience. The 7 the 7 heavenly virtues combine the 4 cardinal virtues of prudence, justice, temperance, and fortitude with the 3 theological virtues of faith, hope, and charity. I think we're getting a little off the beaten track here. I am going to say, is it justice or wisdom? No, that's not quite it. Remember that before she could get her revolver and teach this virtue, the little match girl had to collect a heavy coat, an orchid, a needle, an eraser, a spangle, some Tyrian dye, and a yogurt bowl. Okay, yeah, here we go. The clue is these items have some unifying characteristics, which is honesty, the first letter of each word. A heavy coat and orchid. Okay, honesty. That's exactly right. And now the story is over. We can read it again if we like, but it will all turn out the same. Would you like to restart, restore a save game, quit, or undo the last command? Well, since we know, we should go ahead and undo the last command. So here we are in the courtyard. So instead, let's enter the corridor. And if we... Oh no, undoing the last command just goes back to guessing the virtue. Can we undo again? Okay. Yes, if we undo enough times, we can get back to the corridor. So if we show the revolver, this would be solving the problem with the threat of violence. You'd prefer not to show that to the goblin if you can avoid it. Okay, so we can basically we are being pushed into the correct ending that way. Okay, so I believe that is in fact the correct conclusion. So we have successfully completed the second of the Little Match Girl games. So let's go back to the website and review. So we have experienced the first adventure of the Little Match Girl, and we have now taught a virtue to a goblin and obtained the Colt Paterson revolver. I really enjoyed that. The next time we play will be the Little Match Girl at the Battle of the Grey Peaks, which, so in case it wasn't obvious, I have played all three of these games before. This one is a big logic puzzle, so I might prepare some notes ahead of time next week because that will be. I don't know how much fun it will be to work out all the solutions in real time because it's just a lot of thinking through logical possibilities. We'll cross that bridge next week. But this was a good time. I enjoyed playing through this game, and we shall convene again on next Tuesday if all goes to plan. So have a good rest of your day.